Sandwalker recruits mocked her bare hands, then froze in fear when she summoned fire from sand. They laughed at her. No armor, no weapon, just bare hands touching the sand. In a battalion of high-tech alien cadets, Kaela looked like a mistake, a forgotten relic in a world of machines, until the ground beneath her stirred and fire answered her silence. On the desolate planet of Varnes, recruits are trained to obey, to dominate, to forget the past. But Kaela carries something older than orders, a flame passed down through whispers and blood. When they sent her ahead as bait, they expected her to fall. Instead, she summoned something no one could explain, and nothing would ever be the same again. If stories of quiet strength, ancient power, and emotional redemption move you, make sure to subscribe, like, and leave your thoughts below. Every spark helps us bring more untold sci-fi stories to life. Because this is not just a story about power, it's about memory. And sometimes, to remember who we are, someone must be willing to be forgotten. And Kaela, she was ready. The triple suns of Varnes scorched the desert in relentless waves, casting shimmering halos over the rust-red dunes. Dust hissed with every step as recruits marched in tight formation toward the outer base. Among them, one figure stood out, not by size or weaponry, but by absence. Kaela Vero moved in silence, her hands bare, uncovered, vulnerable. While others bore plasma rifles, exosuits, and sensor visors, she wore only the faded, desert-woven uniform of the Sandwalker tribes. No rank insignia, no tech enhancements. Just two hands, callous and empty. Her presence alone seemed to irritate the others, as if she were an ancient relic among titanium-clad youth. Cadet Niran snorted as they approached the training dome. Look at her. What's she gonna do? Slap the drones to death? The others laughed. Elin didn't even bother turning. Maybe she's bait, she muttered, adjusting her neural HUD. Kaela kept her gaze down, stepping with quiet precision. Inside her chest, her heartbeat was calm, unnervingly calm. She wasn't there to impress. She was there for something else. Still, the sting in her throat betrayed the memory of her mother's last words. You must never use a fire unless it's for truth. The sand shifted beneath her feet, whispering secrets only she could hear. The base loomed ahead like a mirage-turned fortress, metallic towers half buried in dunes, solar wings stretching skyward like broken sails. It was here that the Federation trained its elite, and here that the Sandwalker girl was being tested. Though no one said aloud, the silence around her was thicker than the heat. No one spoke to her, unless to mock. She didn't blame them. This world worshipped machinery, not mystery. As they entered the assembly chamber, a sharp whistle sliced the air. Commander Saren stepped forward, eyes cold, arms clasped behind his back. You are not here to survive. You are here to serve, he growled. The desert will decide who remains. Kaela stood at the end of the row. Saren's gaze flicked past her like she was already a casualty. She felt the stares, the doubt, the small smirk playing at Niran's mouth. But she said nothing. She never did. Speaking had cost her tribe dearly. She had learned the value of silence, how it could shield, hide, and when necessary, explode. The briefing began, outlining the simulation. Intercept rogue drones, secure the relay beacon, and survive. Standard procedure. Except for Kaela, it wouldn't be standard at all. She would walk into fire with only her breath in the sand. Later, as they prepped for the drop, the others equipped thermal blades, pulse bombs, and shield injectors. Kaela watched quietly. Her pack contained only water and a cloth wrap. Elin's voice cut through the tent. You forget your gear, sand girl? No one laughed this time. It had already become boring to mock her. She didn't respond, only adjusted the wrappings around her wrists. Her fingers brushed the surface of the sand beneath the mat. It hummed, faintly. She closed her eyes and listened, letting it course through her. Her ancestors didn't wear armor. They became the storm. Outside, the first transport fired up, kicking up swirling clouds of ash and heat. Niran and Elin loaded in with the others, leaving only one seat open. Kaela waited, watching the sunrise split across the dunes like a blade of fire. A technician motioned to her. You going like that? He asked, puzzled. She nodded. The tech opened his mouth again, then stopped. Her eyes said it all. There was no doubt, only a depth he couldn't read. As she stepped into the transport, sand blew in around her like a cloak. The wind obeyed her even if no one else did. Inside the dropship, tension buzzed like static. The cadet sat strapped in, checking comms and weapon sync. Kaela sat alone near the rear hatch, eyes closed, palms resting gently on her thighs. The silence unnerved them more than her words ever could. Niran tapped his boot impatiently. "Just make sure she doesn't get us killed," he muttered. The ship jolted upward, the roar of the engines muffling further comment. Kaela didn't move. In her mind, she replayed the fire dances of her childhood. The spirals, the chants, the control burn that never left scars. She had learned to let fire live inside, not consume. As the ship neared the simulation zone, the commander's voice echoed through the comm. "You will be tested. None will be spared." A glint of light caught Kaela's eye, a shard of obsidian embedded in the wall, the kind her mother used to mark sacred ground. A sign. She exhaled slowly, then opened her eyes. The wind outside had shifted. Even without stepping onto the sand, she knew something had awakened. The others didn't feel it yet, but they would. And when they did, it would be too late to understand. The desert never explains. It only watches. And then it burns. When the rear doors opened, heat poured in like breath from a furnace. The team filed out, rifles raised. Kaela stepped out last, her boots sinking softly into the dunes. The sun bore down, unforgiving. Elin glanced back once. "She'll slow us down." But the commander's voice cut through. "Everyone moves. No exceptions." They advanced in formation, heading toward the first beacon tower. Kaela trailed just behind, silent, scanning the shifting sands. She could feel the pulse underfoot, a rhythm buried deep, older than war. The others didn't sense it. They never would. This wasn't just terrain. It was her blood. The beacon tower rose in the distance, thin and skeletal against the horizon, pulsing faint blue light, like a heartbeat. The squad moved in a loose V formation, weapon scanning, sensors sweeping. The training program had just activated Phase 1, simulated combat against rogue AI drones. Unpredictable, fast, relentless. Niran took point, barking out adjustments. Elin covered the rear, her cybernetic eye glowing. Kaela lagged slightly behind, her presence barely acknowledged. Every step she took was a whisper to the sand, an invocation. But no one noticed. Above, the first drone darted from the sky, sleek and silent. The mission had begun. They spotted the target cluster and spread out. Niran took cover near a rocky outcrop. "I'll draw them in." Elin, flank left. Kaela, he paused and smirked. Head straight through the open ground. "Make noise. Distract them." It was a death sentence masked as an order. Elin raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. Kaela nodded once. No protest, no question. She walked forward, unarmed, her footsteps stirring fine dust into the air. The others melted into position as she moved deeper into the kill zone. From above, the drones tracked motion. Her heat signature was rising. The trap had been set, except not for her. The moment the first drone descended, Kaela stopped, her feet planted firmly in the sand. She bent down slowly and pressed both palms into the surface. The air thickened. The sun, still high, shimmered unnaturally over her. Behind the rocks, Niran watched through his visor feed. "She's just standing there," he whispered. "Idiot." The drone zipped downward, then froze midair. Its sensors flickered. Elin's HUD glitched, registering Kaela's body temperature spiking rapidly. She tapped her lens, confused. "Commander, something's wrong with the environmentals," she said over comms. But Saren didn't answer. At that moment, Kaela's breath synced with the pulse beneath the sand. Around her, the ground subtly shifted. The grains near her fingers began to vibrate, rearranging themselves into faint lines, symbols, maybe, ancient patterns half erased by time. Kaela whispered something unintelligible. Her body remained still, but her lips moved with intention. The second drone closed in. It fired a stunned burst, but the energy dispersed midair, crackling into static. "What the?" Niran muttered. The others saw it now. The air around Kaela was bending light, creating heat spirals like a mirage. The drones began circling her, but hesitated. Artificial intelligence relied on pattern. Kaela had become unreadable. That made her dangerous. The drones recalculated and attacked together. Kaela didn't flinch. Her fingers pressed deeper into sand. Then the earth responded. A low hum rumbled beneath the surface. The nearest dune collapsing on itself, as if exhaling. From the cavity emerged fire, not a flicker, but a ribbon, swirling and alive. The flames spiraled upward, coiling like a serpent around Kaela's body, without burning her. Her eyes opened, glowing gold. For the first time, she stood not as a recruit, but as an echo of something far older. The drones retreated for half a second, then charged again. The real test had begun. Elin, watching through magnified vision, gasped. She's summoning fire from the ground? The comms crackled with static. The heat rising from Kaela disrupted the network. Niren swore and stood. We need to pull back. This isn't training anymore. He turned to signal retreat, but his display showed only red warnings. Their equipment was failing. One by one, the cadets' weapon systems began to glitch. Kaela stood untouched, fire licking her arms, her hair lifting in waves from heat. And then, with a single motion, she lifted her hand. The flame followed. Her weapon was not forged. It was born. In one sweeping gesture, Kaela arced the flame toward the incoming drones. They were caught mid-flight and engulfed. No screams, just metal warped by heat and circuits fried in an instant. The explosion was blinding. Sand blasted in every direction. When the light faded, the crater before her smoldered. Silence followed. The others stared, mouths parted, unable to speak. Kaela exhaled and let her hand fall. The flame dissipated. She remained upright, but her shoulders sagged slightly. The cost of summoning had been paid, in silence, in breath, in memory. But she had never looked more powerful, or more alone. Commander Saren's voice finally returned to the comms, hoarse and strained. Status report. Niren stumbled forward, shaking. The drones are gone. She destroyed them. No one said her name. Kaela turned and looked at the team. Her expression was unreadable. Not triumph, not anger, not even relief. Just the stillness of someone who had stopped pretending. The silence between them was heavier than any sound. The cadets looked away first. Kaela remained, the last figure on the battlefield, wind curling around her like ash. She wasn't just a girl anymore. She was something remembered. The simulation should have ended, but the system didn't shut down. The sky above flickered, and from the horizon came a deeper rumble. Phase 2 had activated prematurely, but no one moved. All eyes were still on Kaela, uncertain whether to run, follow, or beg for forgiveness. She gave them none, only a slow turn toward the dunes, where the fire still smoldered beneath the surface. She stepped forward once, and the earth responded. With every motion, the question grew louder. What else could she do? And did they dare find out? Kaela stood at the edge of the scorched crater, her boots half buried in molten sand. The scent of ozone clinging to the air. Her breath came slow, measured. The desert had accepted her offering, and now it waited for more, or perhaps for restraint. Behind her, the cadets slowly approached, their expressions flickering between awe and fear. Elin's cybernetic eye whirred faintly as it recalibrated, trying to read her energy signature. This shouldn't be possible, she whispered, almost to herself. Kaela said nothing. She simply knelt and pressed her fingers once more into the cooling soil. The heat pulsed back, not in fire, but memory. The sand beneath her glowed faintly in response, lines of ancient script unfurling in soft amber light. For a moment, time felt suspended. The symbols pulsed, forming a map no one else could read. Kaela's fingers traced the glyphs, spirals, waves, crescents. They weren't just language. They were legacy, a warning and a promise carved into the bones of Varnes. The cadets didn't dare interrupt. Niren's hand hovered over his weapon, but lowered slowly. "What is she?" he muttered. The soil around Kaela shimmered again, this time forming the faint outline of a circle, like a seal being broken. A sudden jolt knocked everyone off their feet. Beneath the ground, a deeper system had awakened. Something old and mechanical, buried since before the Federation claimed the planet. Towers on the horizon flickered as their lights blinked out, replaced by crimson pulses. A low growl, metallic and monstrous, echoed from the deep. Commander Saren's voice returned through static. Abort mission. Full extraction. Now! But it was too late. From beneath the sand, segmented limbs emerged. Not drones, but sentinels, guardians of something sacred. Elin gasped. We triggered a vault. Kaela didn't move. Her eyes remained closed. The flame had drawn attention. One of the sentinels towered over Kaela. The cadets aimed their rifles instinctively. Don't shoot, she snapped, her first word since landing. Everyone froze. The sentinel did not attack. Instead, it scanned her. A beam of light traced her frame, lingering on her hands. The glyphs on the sand glowed in response. Then, without a sound, the sentinel retracted its weapons and folded to its knees. Kaela opened her eyes, breath unbroken. It recognizes me, she said, voice low. I'm not the threat. You are. The silence that followed was not peaceful. It was an accusation, ancient and earned. The other sentinels hesitated, then mirrored the first, kneeling in a wide circle around her. The desert hummed with recognition. Kaela stood slowly, encircled by machines meant to kill, now bowing like disciples. Elin stepped back, her hand trembling. She's not just using power. She is a key. Niran looked from Kaela to the command console on his wrist, fingers twitching. We should report this. This is artifact-level intel. She could destabilize the whole program. But none of the signals were transmitting. The sand had cut the line. Kaela had control, not through tech, but through truth, and that was more dangerous than any weapon. As if confirming their fear, a hidden panel opened behind Kaela. Inside, an altar, ancient and scorched, with carvings that matched the glyphs she had traced. On it, a sphere of condensed flame hovered, suspended in a magnetic field. Her mother's flame, the last of her lineage's legacy. Kaela approached slowly. Her fingers trembled, not from fear, but reverence. She came here too, she murmured, the flame pulsing greeting, then flickered as if recognizing its heir. Kaela's breath caught. This was what her mother died protecting. Not a weapon, but a memory, one the Federation tried to bury. Behind her, Elin's voice cracked. Kaela, are you going to take it? The question carried weight. To take it meant to accept power, history, vengeance. Kaela reached out, but her hand hovered inches from the flame. Her reflection danced in it, scarred, tired, but unwavering. No, she said, voice steadier now. I'm going to listen first. That was her choice, her micro-Garfo. Not to claim, but to understand. Around her, the sand pulsed again. The flame dimmed, then brightened in rhythm with her heartbeat. She had passed the trial not by fire, but by restraint, and the desert approved. Suddenly, a deep grinding sound echoed from the horizon. The dunes shifted. A ship, unlike any Federation craft, emerged from the depths. Smooth, curve alive. It responded to Flame's activation. The cadets watched in disbelief. That's not one of ours, Niran muttered. Kaela turned to face them. It's not yours at all, she said. Her voice wasn't angry. It was factual. This was hers by blood, by sacrifice, by silence broken. And now, everything would change. The sky was no longer theirs. The fire had chosen, and the girl they mocked had become its voice. Kaela stepped toward the hovering flame, the light rippling across her skin like golden water. It no longer danced erratically. It pulsed with purpose. Around her, the sentinels kept their formation unmoving, as if awaiting orders only she could give. The cadets dared not step inside the circle. Even Elin, curious, calculating, stayed back. There was no protocol for this. No Federation manual prepared anyone for witnessing a fire-wielder commune with technology older than their species. Kaela extended her hands, not to take, but to cradle. The flame responded, lowering gently into her palms without burning. Her fingers closed around it like holding a heartbeat. As her skin made contact, memory surged, visions not her own. Her mother, kneeling at this very altar. A storm of ash swallowing a platoon. Screams. Fire that chose to protect, not consume. Then silence. And Kaela, a child buried beneath a collapsed dune, waking to find herself untouched while everyone else vanished. The sphere in her hand pulsed, acknowledging what she had always buried. You were saved because you were meant to return. Her knees buckled, but she didn't fall. The sand supported her. The ancestors whispered, and for the first time, she understood. The fire wasn't just power. It was memory. Outside the circle, the cadets murmured. She's bonding with it. Niren said, uneasy. That can't be good. Elin didn't answer. Her eyes scanned Kaela's vitals. No spikes, no instability. Just resonance. She's not dangerous. She's aligned, she whispered, but her tone betrayed uncertainty. The Federation taught them to fear anomalies, not harmonize with them. A light above the altar ignited. Then another, and another, until the entire structure glowed like a constellation buried beneath sand. The flame in Kaela's hands lifted, separating into dozens of flickering orbs, each one flying to the glyphs across the chamber. The map of the desert came alive. Far above them, Federation satellites locked onto the surge. In the war room of Orbit Base Epsilon, red alerts flashed. Unknown energy signatures. Activation of dormant pre-Federation tech. A general snarled. We have a Sandwalker triggering ancient systems. Intervene now. Back on the surface, a distant rumble grew louder. Dropships. The Federation was coming. Kaela heard it before the others. The flame pulsed violently in her hand, warning her. She turned to the cadets. They're coming to erase this, she said. Her voice held no panic, just clarity. They've done it before. That sentence changed everything. What was once theory became confession. The cadets looked at each other, stunned. Elin stepped forward. You knew. Kaela nodded. They silenced my people, buried the truth beneath your bases. You train on top of graves. Niren stepped back. You're saying with the villains? Kaela didn't answer. She turned to the sentinel that had first bowed and raised her flame toward its chest. The glyphs there lit up. It stood, responding to her command. The others followed. I'm not here for revenge, she said, loud enough for all to hear. I'm here to make sure it happens differently this time. Her micro-decision wasn't about destruction. It was about revelation. A tremor shook the sand. The dropships appeared on the horizon, sleek, black, armed. Kaela didn't flinch. She turned to the altar once more and pressed a flame into its core. The glyphs flared across the desert floor in massive sigils, visible from space. A message was being broadcast, not in language, but light. It told a story, a warning, a choice. Kaela faced the cadets. You can run, she said, or you can stand here and witness. Elin, torn, looked back at the ships, then at Kaela, then stepped inside the circle. One by one, the others followed. Niren hesitated the longest. The first dropship landed with thunderous crack, sand exploding around its hull. Federation soldiers poured out, weapons raised. A commander shouted through a loudspeaker, "Step away from the artifact." Kaela stood firm, sentinels towering behind her. "This isn't your artifact," she replied. "It's my inheritance." The air grew thick with static. The soldiers hesitated. None of them had expected unity, especially from recruits. Elin stood beside Kaela, eyes hard. She didn't break the simulation. She completed it. The commander scowled. "You're all in violation of Protocol 9. Kaela stepped forward. Then Protocol 9 was written to hide the truth. For a moment, it seemed violence would break. Tension stretched like a bowstring. But then, the ground itself split, not violently, but intentionally. A long, glowing corridor opened beneath the altar, leading into the heart of Varnes. The sentinels formed a path. The flame returned to Kaela's palm, quiet now, waiting. "This is bigger than your command," she said, and descended into the earth. One by one, the cadets followed, not with orders, with choice. And above them, The Federation stood frozen, unable to fire, unable to follow. The planet had made its election, and the girl they tried to erase had just become fireborn. The passage beneath the altar was unlike anything the cadets had seen. Walls of crystallized sand reflected golden light from a flame in Kaela's hand, casting moving shadows that seemed almost sentient. The air pulsed with memory, and every step forward felt like stepping backward through time. Kaela led them in silence, but her posture had changed. She walked slower, heavier. The flame flickered erratically now, no longer dancing with ease. Her grip tightened. Elin noticed first. "She's weakening," she whispered to Niran. "That kind of energy, it's not free." But neither of them dared offer help. The flame chose its bearer. The rest could only witness. Kaela's breath grew shallow, and sweat beaded on her brow. Her hands trembled as the flame pulsed in rebellion, no longer harmonizing. Her body had become a conduit, and the strain was showing. They reached the circular chamber, its center marked by a spiral altar made of obsidian. Kaela collapsed to her knees, barely catching herself. The flame floated above her now, resisting her control. "She's burning out," Niran muttered. Elin approached, kneeling beside Kaela. "You have to let it go." Kaela shook her head. "If I do, it goes dark again." Her voice cracked, not from pain, but grief. From the rear of the group, one of the cadets finally spoke. "Then let it go dark. We're not ready for this." Kaela looked up, eyes glowing dimly. "You're right," she said softly. "You're not. That's why it chose me." Her hand slowly released a flame, and it hovered once more between them. But instead of fading, it split, fracturing into multiple shards, each one pulsing differently. They weren't dying. They were multiplying. The chamber responded, glyphs igniting in succession. Kaela watched, stunned. "It's distributing itself." Elin stared at her. "You mean it's no longer just yours?" Kaela gave a hollow smile. "It never was." Above ground, the Federation officers stared at their dead comms. No signal, no visuals, just seismic readings spiking from the altar site. They debated protocol, but no one dared descend. The risk of unleashing unstable tech was too high. General Yeren finally issued the order: lock down the site. Quarantine level 5. If they come out, detain them all. But the officers hesitated. Reports were already leaking. Satellite pings. Unauthorized transmissions. The sigils in the sand had been seen from other worlds. And now, those other worlds were asking questions. Who activated Varnes? What does the flame mean? Is it replicable? Back in the chamber, Kaela sat slumped against the wall, her skin pale. "I can't hold it anymore," she whispered. Elin touched her shoulder. "You don't have to." But Kaela shook her head. "It needs an anchor. It can't exist without a will to protect it." Elin glanced at the floating shards, then at the other cadets. "Then we'll share the weight." Niran stepped forward. "You're all insane." But even he didn't walk away. The flame pulsed again, calmer now, as if responding to trust. One shard floated to Elin, hovering near her hand. Another approached Niran. No force, just invitation. One by one, the cadets accepted their shards, not because they understood, but because Kaela's sacrifice had made them feel something they'd never been taught to value: responsibility born from reverence. The flame didn't burn them. It merged softly, altering them on a level deeper than cells. It didn't grant power like a weapon. It unlocked memory. Visions of deserts not recorded in any Federation database. Wars lost to silence. Songs erased from history. Elin wept as an unfamiliar melody echoed in her mind. Niran stood frozen, a battlefield unfolding behind his eyes. The flame wasn't teaching them how to fight. It was showing why. Kaela, now breathing normally, opened her eyes. "You feel it?" she asked. Elin nodded. "It's not about domination. It's about remembrance." The chamber light shifted, focusing toward a sealed wall. Another door. Another test. But this one required unity. The flame shards floated to the center and merged again, less bright but more stable. Kaela looked at her hands. The burns were gone. The pain had faded. But she knew what had been lost part of herself. The flame had taken memories she hadn't realized she clung to. Her mother's voice was quieter now. The price of carrying fire was letting go of the past. As they prepared to open the next door, a warning echoed to the chamber, deep guttural, ancient, not in language, but feeling. Only truth may pass. The cadets looked at one another. They had carried weapons before. Now they carried history. There could be no more lies, no more pretending. Kaela stepped forward, hand outstretched. "We walk forward," she said, "but we leave behind the Federation's story." The door responded, opening slowly. A rush of warm air met them, fragrant with minerals and memory. The path ahead was uncertain, but they no longer walked in fear. They walked as fireborn. The new chamber was unlike the others, less a temple and more a vault of memory. Crystalline panels floated midair, rotating slowly, each projecting glowing fragments of recorded moments. But these weren't Federation archives. They were raw, intimate, tribal. Kaela stepped inside first, and the room responded. A projection surged to life. Her mother, standing in the dunes, arms raised as fire spiraled around her. The image flickered, then shifted. Federation soldiers arriving. Negotiations. Fear. Then flames, violent, uncontrolled. The scene froze just as her mother fell to her knees, arms shielding a child. Kaela lowered her eyes. This was the truth they buried. Elin approached one of the panels. It shifted to her touch, revealing data logs and forgotten dialect. "These aren't just memories," she whispered. "They're records, testimonies, evidence." One by one, the cadets moved through the room, activating new panels. Each one exposed more peaceful interactions, tribal councils, requests for recognition. Then the shift. Federation officers labeling them unstable, dangerous. Kaela's people hadn't started a war. They had been erased preemptively. Niran backed away from a panel. "They lied to us," he said, voice hollow. Kaela didn't respond. Her silence was louder than outrage. She had always known. A center panel descended slowly, larger than the rest. It displayed a classified Federation recording, Command Council Session 382V. On screen, Commander Saren Younger, seated stiffly before the council. The Sandwalkers are gaining influence. If they unite the tribes, they'll have claim over Varney's core systems. Another general chimed in. "They've weaponized fire. We can't allow that. Final decision. Initiate Protocol Emberfall. Contain and discredit." Kaela's breath caught. Elin stepped forward, fists clenched. "They used your people as a warning. Not because they were dangerous, but because they were right." Kaela's voice finally broke the silence. "And now they're trying again." The group stood in silence. No one reached for a weapon. What could they fight, now that the enemy was history itself? Kaela moved to the console at the center of the room. "The Sandwalkers weren't destroyers," she said. "They were preservers. Fire was their voice. Memory was their weapon." She pressed her palm to the surface. The console glowed, scanning her DNA. A new interface bloomed. Maps of underground structures, ruins across the planet, untouched and hidden. "This world is layered with truth," she continued, "and they paved over it with silence." Her words weren't just revelation. They were indictment. Above them, in orbit base Epsilon, the council panicked. The data stream from the vault chamber had reached off-world observers. Suppressed histories were now public. The Sandwalker legacy was no longer myth. It was proof of Federation betrayal. The general barked orders: deploy blackout teams, scramble transmission satellites, prepare a narrative reset. But already it was too late. Civilian stations had picked up fragments. Worlds long ruled by Federation doctrine were beginning to ask, what else was buried beneath our feet? The fire wasn't just illuminating the past. It was exposing the Empire's foundation. Inside the chamber, Kaela turned to the cadets. "You've seen the truth. Now decide what it means to you." Another micro-Garfo. Niran paced restlessly. "So what, we burn it all down? Overthrow command?" Elin looked at him. "No, we expose them. With clarity, not chaos." Kaela stepped between them. "Flame that's not guided becomes wildfire. That's not what we are. Her voice had steadied. The girl, once silent, was now center of gravity. The flame hovered beside her again, smaller, refined, a reflection of her restraint. Her strength wasn't rage. It was control. Then came the deeper hum. A wall at the far end of the vault slid open. Inside, a tomb, but not one of death, of preservation. Stasis pods lined the walls. Inside them, sleeping figures with tattoos like Kaela's. Survivors. Hidden Sandwalkers. They weren't wiped out, she whispered. They were hidden. The flame orb drifted between the pods, flickering brighter as it passed each one. Their heartbeats returned. Their breaths resumed. One woman opened her eyes identical to Kaela's. Mother? Kaela's knees buckled. Her mother reached out weakly. The fire found you, she whispered, then smiled. And you didn't burn. The cadets fell back in reverent silence. Elan's eyes were wet. Niran looked away. No training could prepare them for this. Kaela took her mother's hand. I thought I lost you. Her mother touched her face. You were never alone. The fire kept watch. Behind them, the vault grew brighter. The flame was not just energy. It was a beacon, a call to awaken. We're not rebels, Kaela said, rising. We're returning. The others nodded, wordlessly aligning with the truth. The next move wasn't war. It was revelation. And the galaxy wouldn't be able to unsee it. The chamber pulsed with new life. The Sandwalkers, long thought extinct, began awakening one by one, their bodies fragile but their presence commanding. The air carried a hum of ancestral memory, as if the planet itself breathed again after centuries of silence. Kaela stood between the old and the new, her mother barely conscious, the cadets watching in reverence, and the flame flickering gently between all of them. She had carried the burden of memory alone. Now that memory had faces, voices, names. The weight was no longer hers to bear, but she wasn't sure she could release it. Commander Saren's voice crackled over a now restored channel. Cadet Kaela, this is your final warning. Surrender the site and return to Federation custody. You will not be harmed. His words rang hollow, stripped of credibility. Kaela walked to the communication panel, activated audio only, and replied, You've already harmed what you feared. Now we've remembered. She closed the channel before he could respond. Niran exhaled sharply. That's it. We've crossed the line. Kaela looked at him. No, the line was drawn before we were born. I just stopped pretending it wasn't there. Elan moved beside her. They'll retaliate. If not now, then soon. Kaela nodded. Then let them, but we won't meet them with violence. Not yet. Her eyes returned to the pods. We protect. We preserve. That was always the way of fire. Her mother stirred again. You can't protect everyone, she murmured. Kaela leaned closer. I know, but I can protect the truth. Her mother's hand tightened briefly before fading back into rest. Kaela stepped away, visibly trembling. For all the power she had manifested, this moment of clarity, of choice, was the one that tested her most. And still, she chose not to burn. A new signal entered the chamber. Civilian broadcasts. Footage of the glyphs. The sentinels. The flame. Dozens of systems were now asking questions the Federation had no answers for. The cadets gathered around a projection screen. We've started something we can't stop, Elan said. Kaela nodded. Good. That's how change works. But the room darkened again. A final sealed door illuminated, marked with a symbol even Kaela didn't recognize. The flame pulsed violently, resisting her approach. What is this? She whispered. Elan read a translation beside it. The heart of Varnes, Niran muttered. I'm guessing it doesn't open with fingerprints. Kaela placed her hand on the lock. Nothing happened. The flame hovered, hesitating. Then a voice not external but internal. Are you willing to be forgotten so the world remembers? Kaela blinked, stunned. The flame had never spoken. It wasn't offering power this time. It was offering sacrifice. She stepped back. It wants more than a leader, she whispered. It wants a legacy without a name. The cadets stood in silence. To complete the awakening meant disappearing into history, a chapter without a signature. Her story would ignite a revolution, but she might vanish in the smoke. Elin reached out. You don't have to do this alone. But Kaela shook her head. I was born into silence. Maybe I was meant to return to it. She turned toward her mother's pod one last time. If I don't come back, tell him I chose this. Not because I had to, but because I could. With that, she stepped into the final chamber. The door sealed behind her. The flame vanished. The symbols went dark. Outside, the Federation scrambled to decipher what had happened, but the chamber became unreadable, cloaked in the same protective encryption that had hidden the Sandwalkers for centuries. Inside, Kaela stood before a core unlike anything she'd seen, liquid fire suspended in orbit, swirling with data, memory, and pain. The voice returned. One must carry the silence, so others may speak. She closed her eyes and stepped forward. The fire didn't consume her. It absorbed her story, her doubts, her name. In the last moment before it closed, she whispered, I am not the last flame. I am the spark. Then she was gone. The chamber sealed itself forever. Outside, the cadets waited, but no door reopened. No light returned. Only stillness. Elin approached the entrance, eyes burning. She gave everything. Niran, uncharacteristically solemn, replied, She lit the match that burned the lies. Around them, the newly awakened Sandwalkers stood in quiet rows. The sentinels knelt once more, and from the glyphs in the walls, a single word emerged, glowing in every known language, awaken. The galaxy would never see Kaela again, but they would see what she became, and from her choice, 1,000 truths would rise. This was not the end of her story. It was the beginning of everyone else's. Outside the sealed vault, silence reigned. The sentinels no longer moved. The Sandwalkers who had awakened stood in a circle, eyes closed, heads tilted slightly, as if listening to something far away. The cadets, now witnesses not soldiers, remained frozen in place. Elin held her breath, waiting for Kaela's return, but the door remained cold, unmoving. Still, the flame that once danced beside them was gone. Yet something had changed. The air itself felt charged with a different energy, softer, fuller, alive. The kind of silence that follows a storm not of destruction, but of revelation. One of the oldest Sandwalkers finally opened his eyes. He moved to the center of the room and touched the floor. The glyphs reignited in a slow ripple, tracing a path outward, illuminating words in ancient dialects and modern tongues. The fire has spoken, he said, and she was its voice. The cadets fell to their knees, not in fear, but in acknowledgement. Niran looked up, his face pale. What happens now? The Sandwalker looked at him, then at the stars above, visible through the glass ceiling. Now they will listen, because they cannot unsee the light. Across the galaxy, data bursts spread like wildfire. The glyphs appeared on civilian networks. Images of the flame, of Kaela, of the awakening. Entire sectors began protesting for transparency. Old teachings were questioned. Statues of Federation war heroes were quietly removed. New ones, made of sand and copper, sculpted from memory, began appearing. No one officially declared Kaela a martyr. No headlines used her name. And yet, whispers of the spark surfaced on every channel, in every system. Street artists painted her silhouette. School children whispered her words. We protect. We preserve. Fire remembers. Kaela had become myth, and myths are harder to kill than truth. Back on Varnes, the cadets helped the Sandwalkers restore the chamber above the vault. But this time they didn't hide it. They built glass walls. Open entry. Anyone could come, learn, question. Elin took charge of documenting the vault's contents, translating each glyph into an archive called a flame library. Niran, once full of arrogance, now trained under the older Sandwalkers, learning to speak with fire rather than fight it. The rest dispersed to other worlds, not to fight a war, but to tell a story. One flame had become many. Kaela's legacy wasn't a monument. It was movement. Commander Saren was quietly discharged from the Federation under vague charges of misconduct. His final report never reached the archives. But Elin kept a copy, one where he wrote, I witnessed a truth too bright to command. Others in the Federation tried to dismiss the event as a training anomaly, a digital corruption, a mass hallucination. But the flame had already spread, not as destruction, but as transformation. Even in denial, the old systems began to change, cracks forming in walls once thought unbreakable. Kaela hadn't destroyed the Federation. She had simply made it impossible to keep pretending. On a quiet evening, Elin stood before the vault, watching the sons of Varney set over the dunes. A young girl, barefoot, hands dusty, approached and asked, "Is it true she disappeared in fire?" Elin smiled softly. "No, she became fire." The girl nodded, then knelt to draw spirals in the sand. Elin didn't stop her. This was how it would continue, not through orders, but echoes, through symbols etched by new hands, through curiosity, through reverence. She turned to leave, and for a brief second, thought she saw Kaela's silhouette reflected in the glass, just standing, watching, as always silent, but present. Later that night, a wind swept across the desert, carving new patterns into the dunes. The flame symbols appeared naturally, no hand responsible. The sentinels turned their heads, scanning the horizon as if waiting. Somewhere far beyond Varney's, a child lit a fire without fuel. On another planet, a woman awoke from a dream she'd never known. Of sand, of light, of a girl with bare hands. The spark had leapt species, worlds, memory. It was no longer tied to bloodlines. It was tied to choice. And as long as someone chose remembrance over ignorance, the fire would live. Elin added the last entry to the flame library, closing it with Kaela's final words. "I am not the last flame. I am the spark." She looked out over the dunes one more time, then turned off the recorder. Around her, the vault's glow dimmed. Not gone, just at peace. The cadets were gone now, scattered across galaxies. The Sandwalkers had begun training a new generation, one that would never know erasure. And Elin, she remained, not as a soldier, but as a storyteller. She would make sure the flame stayed lit, even in darkness, especially in darkness. If this story moved you, if Kaela's sacrifice, her silence, and her spark awakened something in you, then let that fire spread. Like, share, and subscribe to support more stories that bring truth to light. Become a member to help us preserve and tell the forgotten legacies of those who burned quietly but forever. More stories like this are coming. Don't miss the next revelation.